Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if the Indo-Europeans never existed. The Indo-European languages are large, if not even the largest group of languages, native mostly to Western Eurasia. Most languages of Europe, the Iranian Plateau, and northern India belong to the Indo-European languages. There are of course also many other Indo-European languages, but these ones, they are the most spread one. And I'm sure that, well, English, Spanish, Portuguese, they are very good examples of how Indo-European languages spread really far, and good ancient examples of this are Latin, Greek, and of course Germanic. Enough of this. Now let's move to the topic of the so-called Urheimat of the Indo-Europeans. The term of Urheimat means actually the oldest settlement or the oldest home, if we translate it into English. There are different hypotheses, but let's just keep the most important one in mind. Two still very popular theories which I still want to mention, as it would be just fair to do it, are the Anatolian and the Armenian hypothesis. While it may be true or not, I will also not discuss now if the theories they are right or not. They have nothing to do right now with this alternate history. Of course, much later it can always be revised. The only hypothesis which I will discuss is the Kurgan hypothesis. The Kurgan hypothesis says that Indo-Europeans came from the Pontic steppes, or from southeastern Ukraine, southern Russia, and even western Kazakhstan. There were three big waves. The first was the one that went to the Danube, Anatolia region. The second wave to, well, almost to Tibet. We have the Tocharian group. And then came the rest. But the rest in here is a very large group, so I will now not subdivide the different names of the rest. But anyways, you can probably imagine which type of people I mean by the rest. The Proto-Indo-Europeans and archaic Indo-Europeans were part of the Krish culture, the Buk-Dnieper culture, the Dnieper-Donetsk culture, and later on the Yanmaya culture was the most important. It should be noted that Indo-Europeans tamed horses, were farmers, they had dogs, but since they came from the steppe, other people could also tame horses and replace the Indo-Europeans with these. I mean, after all, the steppes and everything that was in that region was just a whole big mess in that time. So what if all of that changed? What if the Indo-Europeans just never existed? The first big implication we will see has to do with Greece and Asia Minor. Mykenæ won't exist, the Hittites as well, however the Pelasgians and Minoans will still be there. The Minoans will most likely survive in some form. They won't be invaded by Mykenæ nor by the Pelasgians, because the Pelasgians apparently did not build many things, except for an oracle in Dodonia or Ionia. Other buildings attributed to them were found out to be buildings by the Mykenæans. The Minoans might locally replace the Mykenæans and influence the Pelasgians. The palace economy would slowly but surely be replaced by trade economy because of the huge spread of the Minoans in the sea. If volcanoes still erupt, we will still see a Bronze Age collapse in some form or another, and the Minoans and the Pelasgians would form a distinct Greek culture, but they will not really be wiped out. And we would also have two Greeces for a certain time. One with more land-orientated people and another one that becomes more maritime. Without the Hittites, someone else could have established a few kingdoms there in Anatolia, but without the chariots and horses, well, I will tell you that Egypt will probably be in a much better spot and much better shape than in OTL. With Egypt being in an even better shape, the Minoans could establish more trade colonies and expand even further. The relationship between the Egyptians and the Minoans was really good, and so when there was a lot of demand and also a bigger empire, of course, the Minoans would profit from it, and they in return would then again spread. Mesopotamia will not change that much, except that without the strong Hittite kingdom, the Egyptians, they will take the place and make even more pressure on them. And there would be many wars between kingdoms, monarchies, republics, city-states, whatever the hell you want, in this geopolitical area. Without the Indo-Europeans in the picture, other populations will come to the Iranian plateau, but chances are that, well, they will be absorbed by Elam. Because, first of all, maybe they will not come by horses yet, or if they come, it might happen a bit later, where Elam could already spread a little bit more. And in such a case, Elam would become basically a pre-Persia that was strong enough to absorb, at least linguistically, all their invaders. I mean, until nowadays in Iran they speak mostly Persian, which didn't change that much, despite having Arabic invasions, Mongol invasions, and many more really fatal invasions. India will have a very different culture, and there will be an absence of a caste system. In my opinion, this will be the biggest butterfly that will happen in such a world. India might have different smaller kingdoms at first, which would compete against each other, and with no restrictive warrior class. Coastal India would see the rise to some trade empires. The Indus River could unite just as Babylonia and become a rival to Elam or post-Elam, and chances are quite high that at first India will be way more split than in OTL, but an empire akin to Rome could appear. Influence from India to Indochina and Indonesia will also be very likely, just as in OTL. And I believe also that most technological advancements in that timeline, they would come mostly from India. With all the smaller kingdoms, the bigger competition, the less restrictions with the caste system, this is a very good situation where you can have a lot of technological advancements. Carthage won't exist, as without the Hittites, much of the Phoenician history will be very different. The post-Minoans or the Minoans would certainly be a good replacement, if not the only one, and for them, and influence the Sicani people from Sicily, the Nugate people from Sardinia, the Taurian from Corsica, and Berber Amazigh people from northern Africa. Unique cultures and empires could evolve in the western Mediterranean. Etruscans could form Razna and compete at first with the Ligurians, then the Sicani in Sicily, and then against the Nugate and the Taurian peoples. Iberia would have Minoan influence because of the silver deposits, and have Basque, Iberian, the pre-Indo-European culture, Tartessian kingdoms. Tartessos and the Minoans could at first be allied to each other, and later have a bad relationship because, well, if you find the sources of all the silver and you have an edge over your partner, it is very likely that you will just try to take it over for yourself. And also, while the Basques could extend their influence until Brittany and be in contact even with the Pictish people in Britain and Ireland, Egypt could potentially become the greatest power for some time after recovering from the alternate sea peoples, while Babylonia, Elam and the Indus civilization will have big and numerous enemies all around. At some point Egypt will stagnate, and the Minoans could have influence over all of Greece, most of Anatolia, parts of Italy, and even in France, most of Spain, and probably also northern Africa. Literacy will spread a bit faster too, thanks to Egypt staying longer alive, and the Minoans who would have trade empire with all of the Mediterranean. Without the Indo-Europeans, Uralic people might invade Europe instead of the Indo-Europeans and even Asia. And this for a few times, not only once but a few times. They would probably have horses too. They would manage to spread until France but be beaten by Iberian powers due to the geographical border that exists in there. And as a reference, I will just take now, for instance, the Moors that were beaten by the Frankish Empire, even though perhaps the Frankish Empire was a little bit less advanced in that time, but the Pyrenees, they are always, if still not a very important geographical border. The same will be true for the Etruscans. They would have the Alps and also the Po Valley, and the Balkans. The Balkans will have the full Uralic influences, because the Balkans, they don't really have, except for the Danube River, a very good natural border. And in some places and at some times of the year, it would be fairly easy for the Uralic people to just cross the Danube River. And I predict that they would even go as far as some parts of Greece and Asia Minor too, while on sea the Minoans could still defend themselves, and I think that the Uralic people, they will not even try so much to go on the sea, and I will explain this part really very much at the end when I talk about religion. If some opportunities arise, the Minoans would be able to expand in Iberia, who were weakened by the Uralic peoples invading from France. And if Egypt would make a total collapse, the Minoans might expand there as well. With the balance of power being changed, Babylonia or Assyria would be able to also expand further, and if an alliance with this alternate Indus Valley Empire would exist, Elam would be taken out, and we would have a very different balance of power. The Minoans who would rule the Mediterranean, the Etruscans who shouldn't be underestimated, a strong Babylonia Assyria that could collapse at any moment due to the very fast and rapid expansion that they had, and just like the Indus Valley Empire, Egyptians who could rebel, and of course the Uralic peoples posing a threat in Iberia, southern France, northern Italy, Balkans, Greece, Anatolia, and perhaps even the Middle East. If the Minoans collapse, then Europe will be a very different Europe. Europe will have influence of the Uralic people, which would even reach North Africa as well. But if the Uralic people can be beaten and blocked in this alternate West, we would see the Minoans as the winners, and the Minoans, they would become the true forefathers of this alternate West. We would then not be talking of the Romans or the Greeks, but we would be talking about the Minoans. And chances are very high that if the Minoans could save a very strong position in the Mediterranean, they would be even able to influence the Uralic people as well, and then maybe Minoanize them instead of becoming Uralic. And as for India, well, the Indians will definitely have more influence in that timeline. And not only that, but they will have a huge influence, and I'm talking about influence over Eastern Africa, Southern Arabia, until Indonesia, and who knows, even parts of Oceania. The main fight will be between the Indians and the one who comes out as a winner between the Minoans and the Uralic people. Now, speaking of the Uralic people and the Minoans, something that is also very important in this timeline is religion. Without the Indo-Europeans, religion will be vastly different. We will have a religion that is very much based, at least in Europe, from the Minoan religion. We will have a lot of influence where we will have more female priests in temples, as well as a very strong symbolism of the bull. Because as you know, the bull was the most important symbol, or one of the most recurrent symbols in the Minoan culture, and it also came from a different culture perhaps. There is a theory that the bull as symbol came from Egypt, and this due to the trade that was made between the Minoans and the Egyptians. So if the Minoans they start to spread, this symbol of the bull will become a very important one for the religion of Europe, or even Northern Africa, or the whole world perhaps. Then when we are talking about the Uralics, we should note that the Uralic people, they had a very important split between the land and the sea. So for them, their god was maybe on the land, maybe in the sky, but the devil, or the anti-part of the god, was mostly in the sea. And that's why before I said that the Uralic people, they would perhaps not like so much to build ships and have a trade empire, because they didn't like very much the sea because of their religion. Of course, some populations of them, they could change, they could just adapt, and we would then have Uralic people would be very much able to have seafaring empires, but they would be probably the minority or the exception, but not the rule. Another thing is that also the Indian religion, while it still will have certain features of Hinduism, because Hinduism is a very, very old religion, it will probably have a very different direction. And it will have probably this direction that it will integrate even more gods from parts of Indonesia, Oceania, even Africa, and it will thus become more unrecognizable. And without the Indo-European influence, there might even be an other factor in there which we will not be able to even discuss, because we just don't have proofs about it. So religion overall will be very different, and if I had to choose, if one religion would go to the monotheistic way, then we might actually have one of the Uralic people who could form a more monotheistic religion, as they had a very principal god, and also this idea of the devil that came from the sea. So there are chances that if a religion would become monotheistic, probably one of the Uralic tribes would find a way to make a monotheistic religion of it. Whereas the Minoans, I think they would not really have this as priority, and their religion would not really become as this strong, influential religion, but it would become rather more something that is important to have as a culture, with all the bulls, with the bullfights, with the priests, the oracles, and all of that. So it will be kind of difficult to have some religious fanaticism in there, whereas I believe that for an Uralic monotheistic religion it would be very much easier to do so.
That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.